Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get into assemblies. So we've just made two parts, two kind of random parts, so they don't really matter, in our part studio. And we can't really do anything to them. We can edit them, but we can't make them interact with each other. And that's why we have this automatically created assembly over here. So if we go down and we click on assembly, we'll be graded by almost a completely blank screen. We have a new toolbar up here, but for the most part, everything else is blank. The first thing you need to do in an assembly is go up here to Insert. You click on Insert and make sure you're on the Current Documents panel. If you, for some reason, made a part in another document, you could go into those other documents and import those. There's also a lot of standard content that you can import, which is super cool, but those are outside the scope of this course. We could just come in here and import whatever parts we want. So let's say I want to import, let's just click on part 1, and as soon as I click on part 1, it will automatically start following my mouse, and I could just place it down. Click on part 2, it will start following my mouse, and I can place it down. Zoom out a little bit, and I have both of these parts. So I'm going to hit the green check mark and hit OK. Now, the assembly is a completely virtual environment for you to build and do whatever you want with. I could grab these parts and move them around. I could. They currently don't interact with each other, but I will make them interact with each other later. This is completely your world to build whatever you want. This is where most of the magic happens when you're CADing. The majority of the time you are spending your effort here in the assembly making things work together rather than the part studio. At least for the higher level CADing. For this course, you will probably be spending a lot of time in the part studio. Alright, so let's say I wanted to mate these two parts together. And this is where the mating features come in. There are 8 different styles of mate. They're all up here on the left side. We'll be focusing on the first one, which is the fasten mate. That is 90% of what you'll be doing to assemble parts. You can explore the different mates that allow you to a pin slot mate allows you to move things in a direction. Planar mates allow things to kind of orbit one another, but we're going to be focusing on the fasten mate. Now, mating is a kind of art in a sense. It is just as much of an art form as it is a science. To any of the people who have CADed before and used Fusion 360, the mating system in Onshape is identical to that of Fusion 360. If you've used Inventor, where you do every part requires 3 mates, that's not at all how the Onshape system works. If you don't know what I just said, it doesn't matter. Just ignore it. But for those previous people who have Fusion experience, that will be helpful right now. Okay, so in order to understand mates, I need you all to focus on something near my cursor. So if I go up here and I click on mate, fasten mate, what's going to happen is this little icon's going to pop up, and whenever I hover over a surface, my mouse will kind of instantly snap to 9 points. There's a center, and then you have the center of all your lines, and then you have your corners. So there's always 9 points on a square surface or a rectangular surface. At the very center of that, you see this almost like Pac-Man looking icon. Almost looks like it's either a Pac-Man or there's like a quarter of a pie left. It's just that kind of weird little icon at the center. And so the purpose of mating in Onshape is you are going to basically place down 2 of those icons, and those icons will then come together. So for example, let's say I wanted to place this blue rectangular prism on top of this gray rectangular prism. So I want to place the center of this guy into the center of this guy. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to click on the center of this blue part. I'm going to place down that Pac-Man, and I'm going to come over here to the gray part, and I'm going to place down another Pac-Man. They're going to go together. So if you think about it, the two Pac-Man just kind of slid on top of each other. That's not what I wanted them to do. I didn't want them to be on top of each other that way. I wanted them to be flipped over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this little tool right here that says Flip Primary Axis. Very useful tool. And I'm just going to click on it, and that will flip one of the Pac-Man on top of each other. So you can notice that both of those little Pac-Man that I placed down are facing each other right now. I could rotate them if necessary. I could flip them around the main axis. But now they are interlocked with each other. And if I hit OK on the assembly, I can now move this entire thing as one. Through one fasten, which now appears over here on the mate feature, I have interlocked these two parts basically permanently. I could always go in and delete the fasten if I wanted to, and they'll separate from each other, but I'm going to hit Control Z because I didn't want to do that. So this is how you'll begin to create your parts. And you could come in here and you can notice that, hey, wait, this blue part doesn't perfectly match the gray part. There's a little bit of a gap here. So what I could do is I could come over here to the Part Studio and I could fix it. I could say, well, you know, sketch number 1, that's not completely right. I'm going to come over here, double click on sketch 1, and I realize I don't have any dimensions. So I want to place some dimensions. I'm going to come up here to the dimension tool. I'm going to dimension you, and I want you to be 3 inches because I know the other one was 3 inches. Come over to this side. I want you to be 3 inches as well. I'll hit OK. And then if I come over here to the assembly, it's automatically fixed. Any changes you make inside the Part Studio are automatically updated in the assembly, which is really cool. Just a little bit more about mating. I'm going to insert another part just to show some examples. It's very, very important, the orientation of that Pac-Man icon. So if I come over here, Fasten Mate, one thing you might notice, if I come over here to the edge, there's a huge difference in the outcomes of my mates depending on the orientation of that Pac-Man. So currently, I have this this forward surface highlighted. You can notice there's that yellow outline around this entire surface. And if I bring my mouse up towards this upper white point, you'll notice that the Pac-Man is parallel to this front face. Now, if I raise my mouse up a little bit and I come over here to this top surface that I'm now highlighting, and I bring my mouse over towards this white point, it's the same white point. They're the same physical location in space halfway across this line, but you can notice that the Pac-Man is now no longer parallel to the front face, it's now parallel to the top face. And if I come over here and I select this line, I'm not clicking or anything, I'm just moving my mouse around. If I highlight just this line and I come over here to that center point, again, same white point, you'll notice that the Pac-Man icon is now no longer parallel to either the front or the top. And so it's very important you keep in mind that this is very different from that. So this is why I say that mating is kind of an art, that a lot of students will get very confused when they try mating something because they'll try like mating this instead of this. So like a great example, let's say I wanted to put you know, these two surfaces together. So if I come over here and I accidentally select this edge and I select the front of this guy, these pieces will automatically be smushed together. Because if you think about it, those Pac-Mans want to fit on top of each other, basically. And what that forced is it forced the Pac-Man that was along the edge to rotate this entire piece, and now it's not doing what you want it to. And if this ever happens, if you suddenly get a mate and you're like, hey, wait, that's not what I wanted, the best thing to do is just hit the exit on the mate and try again. And this just takes practice. I really wish I could just instill knowledge of how to do proper mates in CAD, but it's just something that you're gonna just have to try and try again. There's no easy formula that I've found to teach students how to properly apply mates to their um, assemblies. It's just something you're gonna have to go in and mess around with until you get it right. Um, just as a final example with the tools, let's say I'm gonna mate the top of this face to the bottom of this face. Oh, I'm gonna redo that. U to U. For some reason, it is not doing what I want, so I'm just gonna hit escape. I'm gonna hit fast mate one more time. Click on U. Click on U. Cool. So now both of those Pac-Man lay on top of each other. But sometimes that's not what happens. Sometimes you get something like that. And you're like, well, the Pac-Man are laying on top of each other, but not in the way I want. And so in some cases, you're going to have to mess with these two tools right here. They're also the same two tools right here. Flipping the object around, now it's teleporting inside the other piece, and rotating it 90 degrees along the axis. Very useful to try and force what you want to happen. You can also offset parts. So if I go over here and click on offset, I can type in numbers to offset in the X, Y, or Z direction if you need to apply that to one of your mates. So, yep, that's mating for now. I've created a single uniform piece or a single uniform assembly out of 3 different parts. In the next video, I will show you all how to turn this into a drawing so you can submit it to your professor.